show number 66 on The Last Angry DJ. I'm the old Last Angry guy, and we got some more recent folks here that can talk about the more recent days of broadcasting, media, all kinds of stuff that happens on the internet. We're very happy to be here again. We're sorry we missed you last week. We had to take a little time off to sip some wine and do things that we have to do in our personal lives. We won't do that very often, so that's our promise to you. My name is Mitch Hill, and we're brought to you by my good friends at Arby's. We have the meats. They also have a great app. If you ever want to check out what Arby's has going on, you'll get a message on a daily basis about specials and discounts and like BOGO, which means buy one, get one free. So if you like buy one Arby's sandwich, you can get out for free. So it's a no-brainer. Go to your Arby's app, get it, enjoy it, eat it. That's what I like to say. Alex, are you eating it lately?
You know, I wish I could, Mitch, but we don't have an Arby's anywhere near that I am. But I miss those curly fries. But it's good to be here for The Last Angry DJ, episode 66. This is the show where we interview luminaries in the world of broadcast. Everyone from ex-DJs to radio station owners and salespeople, marketing people. But it's not just limited to the world of broadcast. We interview content creators, YouTubers, podcasters, because this is the show that intersects old media and new media, and we talk about the challenges that the industry is facing, and that's always going to be an underlying theme on this show. I'd like to introduce Mark Giuliani as part of our panel. How's it going, Mark?
It's going great, and I'm looking forward to a good show today, but I'm looking forward even more to getting a beef and cheddar from Arby's.
Beef and cheddar, one of my favorites. I like that. So make sure you check them out. By the way, a friend of mine owns a bunch of Arby's in my area, so that's all that really matters. So if you don't have them in Canada, just blame it on the tariff. That's what's going on. And Alex, you recently returned from a wine tasting trip. What do they do exactly at a wine tasting thing? Are you a wine snob now, or you enjoy all kinds?
You know, I wouldn't call myself a wine connoisseur. I don't drink it that often.
Snob.
I'll have a couple glasses once a week, but I wouldn't say I really know what I'm talking about. I love drinking wine. And so I had a great trip last week, went up to Naramata in British Columbia, which is all wine country there. Stayed in Naramata, and then Penticton, which is the city just outside of Naramata. Lots of wineries, so had a fantastic time. Had lots of wine and also a lot of fantastic food. So it was a good trip. I needed it. You know, I work pretty hard year round. Don't take a lot of vacation days, so it was good to just unwind a little bit and get rid of that burnout that I'm feeling. Unwind. Unwind. I got it. Gotcha. Yeah,
you got to get a pun in there somewhere, right? I'm going to go on a maple syrup tasting trip, perhaps down to Florida, because they have great maple syrup down there. No comment. Okay. What are we going to do now? So anyhow, Alex is back. He's more edified as far as wine goes. I'm just happy with a glass of Manischewitz once in a while. You know, the thicker it is, if you got to cut it with a pair of scissors, I'm happy. And if it comes in a box, no problem. I want that wine in a box so I can read the missing people things on the side of it. It's all the good stuff. So here we are, once again, The Last Angry DJ. We like to talk about different things. Some of them have, what do you use that word, tangential? I have a hard time with that word.
Tangential.
Tangential. Okay, good. It's like Benjamin
I'm not
Cumberbatch.
Sure if you're using, I'm not sure if you're using that word right, though, but go ahead.
It's something that sort of leans up against it, but not quite on subject. Right, right. I'm talking slightly off subject, tangentially, about broadcasting. Today we're going to talk right on it. We're going to get right on broadcasting. Alex brought up the idea that we should talk about the way radio sounded back in the 70s versus what it sounds like today. And first of all, you have to think, is there a difference? Does it sound different? And I'm here to tell you, as a guy that spoke on the radio in the 70s, what I like to call the golden age of broadcasting, yes, very much so. It sounded totally different versus what it likes today. Now, the first thing I want to get out of the way before Alex does it is that, you know, there's all those people that think that when they think of a disc jockey, it's the people talk like, hey, everybody, it's 625 in the big city. That's not what radio people sound like. That's what people think radio guys sound like. It's a bad misconception. It's a stereotype, and I take exception to it. I don't like being told that I sound like that. We call those what do we call them? Not yuckers. Yeah, they're yuckers when they talk like the only good example I could give of talking like that would be like Wink Martindale that used to do game shows. And they would talk like this, everybody. It's 6:25. We'll be right back after these messages. That to me is just not radio. That doesn't sound normal. But there is a difference between the way radio guys sounded back in the day and the way they sound today. So before we get into some actual examples, because I do have some, Alex, what do you think is the major reason that there is a difference in style and sound? We're not talking technical. We're talking presentation and branding. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the main difference?
I think people just got tired of it, and I think it certainly pushed from top down in education and schools, broadcast schools. I went to broadcast school pretty late in my life. After I worked a very long career in tech, I decided to change careers. I thought I would maybe pursue a career in radio, and they hammered that home from the get-go about just be yourself. Don't try to sound like some big radio personality, especially if you don't have the chops, if you don't have the voice. But they really encourage just this natural speaking voice. Not to say that you shouldn't work on your craft. I mean, everybody, your voice is a muscle. Your vocal cords are a muscle. You can get better at communication, but don't pretend. Don't try to act like someone you're not. It's all about authenticity. So that's what they really push. If you take broadcast training, that's what they encourage.
Alex's opinions do not necessarily represent those of the last American DJ. Well, maybe it is the last angry DJ. Alex is talking about today. The style today is more natural, without affectation. Now, back in the day, they did want you to talk a little over the top. In other words, it would be, I think Alex Lindsay on Office Hours says, you times 10. Would be what they would call. So your personality would be a little bit more energetic, a little bit more over the top, a little bit more so you talk over the music, a little bit more from talking from Mount Olympus, let's say. And they even would put reverb on our voices back in the day. So I have an example of what we call an air check in the radio business. And Alex went to a lot of trouble to make sure this, when we play this air check, that the music, which has been scoped. We just chop the intro and the outro of the song with the announcer. So we only hear the announcer parts, not the whole song, just to make sure we didn't get flagged by YouTube. So if all of a sudden our audio completely blanks out, it means we got flagged. On the other hand, we'll find out if we got a strike after the effect. So theoretically, I can play this air check and we're not going to get struck. But there's the excitement of doing a live show. We don't know if we're going to get struck or not. So here's what I sounded like. That's me, sounded like in 1976 on a local radio station. We can talk while it's playing if you want to, but I'm just going to roll it for a couple of minutes.
Bicentennial Fraud, the American Woman. That's the Guess Who, and I'm Bobby Dark. Color My World is probably the most requested oldie of all time that we get here at the radio station, but it looks like it's going to be another song on the top of the list. Comes to us from Chicago 10. If You Leave Me Now, at WAMS. If you leave me now. WAMS with the best music 24 hours a day. 2:28 afternoon time with Bobby in the DuPont City. This is Sharon Bono and Half Breed. Call it that because one half is Bono and the other half is Almond. Bobby Dark. Tell me which half you like there. WAMS, afternoon rock and roll at 2:30. This is Bobby Dark. And a nice, mellow, laid-back tune from the Four Tops. Ain't no woman
Mitch, this is
like
what
the
they
one
call,
I had.
This is what they call an air check, right?
Yes, that's an air check.
Yeah, but were you that energetic during the regular program?
That's actually me kind of talking over some mellow music. I mean, believe it or not,
Right.
those weren't really, high energy Rick Derringer rock and roll hoochie coo,
Right.
but I could do that.
You sound like a completely different person. I don't even. Obviously, it's been a long time. Your voice has changed over the years with age too.
It's not that.
Admit it. You are doing a little bit of that. Hey, everybody. You are doing a little bit of a
other than
performative thing.
I submit to your inaccuracy. No. the idea was that you had to sound a little bit above the conversation. In other words, if I were to direct you as a 70s radio guy, I would say, pretend you're in a room with a lot of people in it, and you have to talk over the noise in the room. So you're going to press your voice to project and be a little louder so you can talk over the song. So if I were having a conversation the same way that I did in the 70s, I'd be like more, 78 degrees right now in the Windy City. We're enjoying a great afternoon in the summertime. Good to have you here. Enjoy yourself. If you have a song you'd like to hear, call us on 302-764-5300. And if you're right on it that you're, whatever, you just easily lay into it. That's the style. It's a pushy, upbeat, happy, kind of happy-go-lucky. And the interesting thing about it is if you go in to go to work and be on the air and you felt like crap, you couldn't sound like you can't complain about, I feel like shit today. I don't really want to be here, et cetera, et cetera. No, you got to pump it up and be happy and bubbly and all that kind of stuff. That's what made radio sound like in the 70s. So go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I was just going. One question before you continue though. If we go back even further to, and I kind of want to get everybody's opinion here about this, including you in the chat. So if you have a comment, please let us know. But if you listen to broadcasts from the 1940s and 50s, and then, things started to change a little bit in the 60s, but they had a very different cadence. And I'm not sure if it was because radio was a much newer medium back then in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But they had a very, I just feel like a very different style of performing that I can't imagine anybody sounded like that in real life. You know what I'm talking about, right?
They did sound over the top. I mean, think about, you're not going to recognize the reference, but some of you can look it up. Walter Winchell used to be a famous newsman that covered the news out of Hollywood. And he was the guy to talk like this. Everybody, all the ships at sea. This is Walter Winchell. Today, flash, the Nazis are attacking Poland. That was the style of the 40s and maybe even the 50s of doing the news. It was upbeat. He kind of yelled over whatever was going on. And you could hear it if you were happened to be in a room and the radio was on in the corner. You'd pay more attention to it because somebody's, being loud. It's possible that in the 40s or 30s or, when Marconi was first started, people would talk into it just like normal. But that was before branding and music and all the other things. As a disc jockey in the 70s and maybe even in the 60s, our job is to talk over the intro and the outro of a song. And that's the part where the beginning of the song starts, and then you stop talking when the music starts singing or there's a big bridge there or a break. And the same thing when you're coming out of a song. You have to announce the station call letters, basically where you are, what's going on. It's a summer day. It's beautiful outside. We'd call those relatables. And something, maybe a joke about the song. I'll play a little bit more, and then I'll come back and say what I just did.
Tonight's game with 2 with Atlanta. Steve Carl.
Going, always going, home entertainment space.
Well, this is Bobby Dark. Great day out there. Sunshine all over the place. Expected a high to 84 today and tomorrow. Low down to 60. Tonight's 83. Good night to find out what people are up to. There are many ways.
See, that's just an example of telling people the weather is, because, again, we didn't have internet back then. So, you might want to know what the current temperature is. But essentially, you just want to let people know everything's okay. And do it in an upbeat, happy, very upbeat. Now, that was my style. And it was probably a style that I built on listening to a lot of other, popular DJs at the time. But that represented the 70s, what I was doing there. I wouldn't do it that way today if I were doing radio. I'd be more conversational like we are right now. Because people would kind of look at you strangely. The way I would draw the comparison is if you went out to dinner with the family and said, hey, would you please pass the gravy, that brown, delicious gravy right now? You wouldn't talk like that in public.
Right,
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because it would seem like a commercial. And people would probably say, your family members would be going like, Mitch, just relax. You're not at work. You don't need to be
Hey, have you tasted the turkey? Yeah. The turkey is rich and moist and beautiful.
You don't need to be turned on all the time. It's okay to just chill out and relax, let your voice have a break. So yeah, I know, I totally get it. It's very fascinating to me how this stuff has evolved over time. Because language, this is all related to language, and I feel like communication styles even. changed. So communication styles change over the decades, and also just language. Language evolves too. Like, I mean, think about the slang, the current slang, and in the vernacular. There's a whole new generation now of kids that are growing up, and some of the stuff that they say, I don't even know what they're talking about. Like, I literally have no idea. Some of the words that they say, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
It makes me feel
when you
old.
when I listen to that air check, there's a couple of like, oh my God, did I really just say that? It wouldn't fly in today's. Like I made a joke about the Bahama Mama, an island girl with Elton John. Yeah, I wouldn't do that today. I wouldn't make fun of that, but it was okay to do that. I made a joke about Cher, not going out with Sonny Bono anymore and going out with Greg Allman, who she did eventually. I made a joke about that. I even criticized Elton John's sexuality when he did that song with Kiki D, and that's something that wouldn't fly today.
Uh-oh.
So. Yeah, definitely. I definitely did that. So back in then, it was okay to be a little bit mischievous and talk about things that were bad subjects. But what we didn't do is we didn't curse on the air. We didn't describe bodily functions of any kind. I think Howard Stern broke the paradigm there as far as that goes. He kind of pushed the envelope for everybody. And nowadays, with the FCC, if you got a notice of violation because of the content that the jock was talking about, I bet it would go something like this. The FCC is that we're not criticizing you for saying this word or that word, but we are saying that you have to determine what are the public standards in your area where you would doing that. Mark, do you ever get any kind of feedback from any of your talk shows of people talking about something that made someone feel uncomfortable and they wanted some kind of retribution from you as the owner of the station?
Fortunately, not.
Well, that'll
We haven't
change.
had
I'm going to start.
any of those issues. Yes. Now
Have me
I
come
get-
on as a guest. I'm going to change that for you.
Okay. All right.
It'd be good. But generally, the FCC requires you to determine what is considered to be obscene or inappropriate language by the standards of your coverage area. And if somebody complains about it, the FCC is going to say, you, as the broadcaster, have to resolve that with that listener. They try not to be the arbiter of good taste in language. So unless you go right over and step on something horrible, like Howard Stern, again, was the guy that kind of broke the paradigm there. And he was famous for, collecting fines. But usually for again, I'm going to talk a little out of practice here. I think that he would libel somebody or impugn something. And here's the other thing with public figures. If you're a public figure, and yes, I was, Bobby Dashboard Dark. Thank you, Stephen. If you're a public official of some kind, then you have to be able to take the slings and arrows of discontent from the on-the-air staff, and it's not considered libel at that point. And it was definitely, Ernesto, it was a style of radio back in the day. It was two pieces. One is to sound upbeat and happy, and the other part was don't forget you're branding your radio station. So that's why you hear me say WAMS it's almost the first thing comes out of my mouth. And I used to pick on our boss in conversation. She said, I always want you to say the call letters first before you do anything else. And I'd go, WAMS, you mean you want me to say WAMS before I say, hey, can I work this weekend at 2 instead of 3 o'clock? WAMS. I mean, he'd go, all right, smart ass, cut it out. So that was kind of the style back then. I don't really think I don't think I need to play more of the air check unless you want me to at this time.
Play a little bit.
Okay, we'll play a little bit more. And if there's something that comes up, stop me and say, hey, what did you do and why did you do that?
This is Bobby Dark here. I got arrested for kissing the ground she walks on. Isn't that ridiculous? They'll find any excuse to arrest you now. Hey, the Phils finally won a game.
Well, I don't want to hear
There's
that.
sunshine all over the place. Expected a high to 84 today and tomorrow. Low down to 60. Tonight's 83. Good night to find out what people are up to. There are many ways. WAMS, the summer station. Good afternoon, this is Bobby. 19 before 3 old rock with the best music 24 hours a day at Wilmington's #1 radio station. And if you don't believe me, then just listen.
Couple of things that happened there is that that was a flat-out branding intro. I was pushing the radio station and the format.
They like reverb.
And again,
They like reverb on people's voices.
oh yeah, to make you sound bigger than life, and you're coming from the top of Mount Olympus. And back in the 50s and 60s, they actually had reverb pedals in the control room, so they could one hit after another. You know, they'd had the little pedal that they'd step on to make it sound impressive. And then reverb kind of went out in the mid to late 70s. I remember they took it off of WFIL, and all of a sudden I felt like I was in a closet, because I used to have this voice that would talk in the room, and it would bounce off the walls, and then all of a sudden it was just like, "Hi, it's me again," you know, talking like that. So that's a good enough a bunch of examples. That was me in 1976. I'd say I was at top of my game back then as Bobby Dashboard Dark. And I was working at a radio station that I loved. And that air check, I think, is the one that got me hired at WFIL, mainly because I hit every single song intro. Right. It was a legit read. And I'd sent checks before, just like that, to radio stations all over the country, and I got refusals. So that was the style then. Let's talk about the style now, Alex.
Absolutely. And I wanted to get your opinions on this, and everybody in the chat. But I feel, my opinion is that when I listen to the radio, the big popular radio stations here, and there's a couple of big ones, I feel that I'm not as entertained as I used to be. And it's not just the delivery, the energy of the performer. I think that's one part of it, but I think it's just the talent overall. So how do you all feel about that? Do you think that we've gone kind of too far the other way, where everyone is being so much themselves, there's so much authenticity that it's just kind of all bland, homogenous, and boring now? How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel it's not working, for one thing. I think that a lot of personalities, and we'll use that term, came out of the 70s style of radio, like Wolfman Jack. I mean, that wasn't a real person, but he did this style of broadcasting that, if you've ever heard him before, is like, "Hey, everybody, it's Wolfman Jack. If I'm lying, I'm dying." It was an affected voice that was a style, and you kind of like, "Oh wow, that's Wolfman. He's this big hairy beast." Right? But that's a personality. I would call that a personality, not necessarily a character. There was a famous DJ who I'm kind of buddies with. I'm trying to get him on the show, named the Grease Man. And there was a great, "Oh, the Grease Man, how about a guy, you're feeling rosy." You know, he had an affected voice and style, and he had this whole second language where he wasn't saying anything bad, but you sure as hell knew what he was talking about. So I'd love to get him on as an example. So back then, it was okay to have a style or a personality, and there were tons of famous DJs in L.A., the real Don Steele, Charlie Tuna. I think Charlie's still with us. Rick D's probably been the most recent version of a character. He did that song, Alex, I'm sure he played this every morning, Disco Duck. Remember the Disco Duck song? See, it's so bad you don't even recall it. So, yeah, style, personality, a character, that made you stand out from everybody else. If you're just if you're just an announcer or just a personality where you're just talking, that kind of brings you down a few rungs as far as a memorable style of radio that doesn't let you get away with being over the top, because people kind of like being entertained that way. But I would say, and I think we'll have a chance to talk to Gary Berkowitz about this next week when he's our guest again. Gary programs radio stations with a classic hits format. He would probably say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Gary, but you would probably say, I think the DJ should be a companion, somebody that's talking to you about things that you deal with in everyday life, how the music relates to that, and it can be more conversational like I am being right now, as opposed to be, "Hey, everybody, it's a great day to be out talking about riots in L.A., or whatever." You wouldn't be doing that. You would be more, everything's okay. It's a good day to be out. That asteroid they keep talking about won't hit us for another 10 or 15 years. So we got plenty of time to run up our credit cards and have some fun. That would be kind of like, the style if you're going to calm down and be more conversational. And in your case, Alex, I think that your type of radio that you would like to listen to is you want to know more about the music. You want to know more about the stories behind the music, things that happened in a recording studio when it done it. Rick Beato, who has a great YouTube channel, talks a lot about that with the actual artists we're living. A lot of them are still with us. So if you want to, talk to Gilmore about the Dark Side of the Moon with Pink Floyd, he's interviewing these guys, and you're hearing stories and inspiration that went into the songs that they made and little stories behind them. I heard a story the other day. Rick Beato was talking to one of the, I can't remember which one of the last remaining Doors members. And they were talking about how they, got the sound effect for Riders on the Storm and where the name came from. And this turned out the sound effects came from an Electro Asylum sound effects disc that they had lying around, and they played it, to have the effect. And I have that disc, by the way, of sound effects, and I pulled the disc out and listened to it. I said, yeah, that's the exact same thunderstorm on Riders on the Storm. That's a cool story. So, Alex, do you like those kind of backwater stories about how the song got made? What were the stories behind it? Inspiration, things like that?
For me, I feel like if I'm going to listen to the radio, I'm not listening for the absolute fidelity because I'm a radio snob, or I'm a music quality or sound quality snob. But for me, yes, I think that's really the primary driving force. That is the main reason why I would tune in. I think that's the value proposition of listening to the radio is I'm tuning in for the talent. I'm tuning in for somebody's incredible knowledge. You listen to Randy Bachman on CBC talking for hours, giving you all this incredible detail about how this album was made, very much like the stories that Rick Beato, who's also very fantastic doing this kind of stuff on his YouTube show. That's why I'm listening. And I imagine many people are tuning in because of that personality, because of their knowledge. That, to me, is the reason to listen to it.
Yeah, and that's your opinion. It isn't necessarily the way everybody is. Otherwise, everybody would be telling a story about the music that's playing. I do like these shows that they run on Sirius XM where they have artists with their own, Hall & Oates, Daryl Hall, was his backyard or something like that. I mean, it's like where he's got a playlist of songs and he likes to play them. I'd be very interested to hear what Rick James, when he was alive, what was his favorite artist that he liked to listen to? Obviously, he was a Motown artist and he did very well with it. But any artist like that, and you can get that on Apple Music, where they curate a playlist. That's kind of interesting. I'm curious about that. When Howard Stern does interviews now, I mean, I picked on Howard about being very repetitious and foul-mouthed just for the sake of being foul-mouthed. He's turned in quite an interviewer. If you ever seen the Billy Joel or the Bruce Springsteen interviews that he has done, really quite good. He's turned into an excellent interviewer, and I like to listen. I like to listen to him for that. I'm not into Fart Man and all the weird offshoot comedy that he does because I'm just kind of outgrew it. But I do like his interviews. I think he's done a great job with that, and I like his style and ability to talk about anything.
See, I'm the complete opposite because I have a very sophomore juvenile style of humor, Mitch. So for me, like that type of humor, I love all the fart jokes. I love all that disgusting stuff. He still does that. I listen to Howard Stern every single week, and I know it's not for everybody, but look, he made a very successful career out of that show. So he knows what he's doing, and it's not for everyone. He has his core audience. There are going to be some people like yourself, you're not going to be interested in listening to that all. But he has a really good show. I mean, he knows what he's doing. He knows how to build an audience, and you can't knock that.
He's built a channel, and he may have single-handedly kept Sirius XM afloat because of Howard 100. So, they built a whole series of channels around that. So good on them. I mean, that's fine. Everybody has their own reason for listening to radio. I think generally, I would say people like listening to radio because they want company. They want company while they're doing something else. They want to, have some kind of background active so that they feel like they're in touch, or if something should happen, or if a tornado is touching down across the street from where you are right now, you're going to hear it instantly on the radio. Like, Mark, you're in a tornado watch right now. Wouldn't you like to hear it on the radio first?
Yes, I would. I wish I could listen to the radio while we're talking here. But I have some questions about the style and
Okay.
the relationship between the style and the band. So did the style become the style because back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, most of the stations were broadcasting over AM, right?
Yeah. I mean, FM was the exception to the rule, without a doubt.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So you had the cadence and the tone and the style that was coming out between the songs. So you had music. So for your voice to stick out, you had to bring your voice level up. You had to have a different pace than what the music was having, but you didn't want to. You also had to differentiate yourself from the news, the traffic, whatever was playing at the top of the hour, at the bottom of the hour, or not sound like an ad, so that there was a style there. The old school style was to add a little pizzazz.
Fizz.
Yeah.
Add a little fizz to everything.
Yeah. And I think that was the style. And I think the reasons the schools may have changed for several different reasons. You had technology changes that allowed your headsets to be better, number one. Number two, you had transmitters that were improving in the quality of the sound that was going out over the air. And there weren't as many good people at doing that sort of style. Your voice had to be trained a certain way to constantly have a consistent delivery for 3-4 hours a day, depending how long your shift was.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with a couple of those comments. One of them is the one you just said. Consistency was important. Keeping it upbeat. I mean, here's me on a air check, not an air check, a survey. And I've shown this before because, that's my picture, believe it or not, with a lot of friggin' hair. And look at the artist. I mean, am I changing my voice for all those artists? There was such a variety of music that was out in the 70s. Everything from Stairway to Heaven over to Arlo Guthrie to Johnny Rivers to Mott the Hoople, Moody Blues, America, Curtis Mayfield, all over the place. So it would be impossible to have one style of delivery that would fit all of those music cuts accordingly. But overall, I think the overall feeling for that radio station would be to be upbeat, very maybe high energy, just like you heard on the air check. That was sort of the overriding factor to be something that, hey, I like that Bobby Dark. He's kind of like upbeat and fun and happening. And that's why I got hired at FIL, because I did the same thing there, except I was pushing their brand, their call letters, their jingles, and all the stuff that went along with it. Pretty much the same music. So, yeah, it's changed a little bit over the time with the music, but I would say that there was a lot more variety of music playing on the radio back in the 70s than there are today. I mean, there's so much consistency of the style and presentation of music that you're hearing on pop radio, they call it CHR now, contemporary hit radio. The variety of the music is not that high. It's pretty much all the same. It's not that. I mean, Alex, would you agree that the music style is pretty much homogenized and mixed up in a mixer and pushed out there? It sounds so much alike.
It depends. I don't know what they play because I don't really listen to the radio for music anymore. So I think that is true to a degree. I think in pop music especially, in production styles too. Production has changed, but I think that a lot of stuff is produced in a very similar way. 20 years ago, we had the loudness wars. I don't think the loudness wars are over yet. So things are very, very highly compressed. The overall dynamics available in music has been reduced a lot. So, certainly in any genre, you could make an argument that there's a lot of similarity with what gets played. But I feel a little out of touch. I'm not that fantastic when it comes to discovering new music. I kind of stick to what I know, and I don't really discover a lot of new music. Other than what people suggest and recommend to me, and I'll go check it out. I'll give it a chance at least. But I agree. I think there is some truth to a lot of music kind of sounding very, very similar. And I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. I fucking hate auto-tune. I hate that it's used. I hate that it's overused all the time. It's used as an effect, and
ever since Cher, and I believe
it's used in pop music all the time. It's used in hip hop music all the time. I really wish people would kind of slow down and use it more subtly, and just not throw it on their vocal chain, and just it becomes a crush. You rely on it. So and then it always makes me wonder, well, can that person actually sing? Do they actually have a real voice, right? So
I think it's a style. I think that's what they just, ever since Cher certainly didn't need autotuning because she could sing on key, but it was used as an effect. I think it was like the first contemporary usage of autotune when she did I Believe, and she would jump up and down with the autotune. I think it was just like, oh, what's that? That's kind of new. That's kind of weird, but. Following the lemming down and over the cliff has been a thing that radio's done for a very long time. The style today, I don't think that they want personalities, the ownership of the radio stations, the big guys anyhow, because when they build up a personality, they're basically building up somebody that they have to pay more. And they have to consistently pay them. And it's not interchangeable like their corporate concept. When you think about the way corporations operate, they're interested in making money. There's no conspiracy theory here. They may be accused of having bad taste, but they just want to have the best ratings in the market and be able to sell time on that radio station. And sometimes there's no room for off-the-shelf personalities. They become expensive to maintain and keep overhead. So, even our good friend Andre Gardner, who has been on his friend of show, been on the show, was the top DJ on WMGK in Philadelphia, who's the top classic hits radio station in Philadelphia, and he got canned. And it's just after a contract renewal. So you have to wonder what's going through their heads when they do that. Or, big personalities in big markets, they're getting canned left and right. And it's a weird, case and point. Yeah, go ahead, Alex. You have something you want to say?
Yeah, and actually, you look, even last week too, when we had Tom Birch on, right?
Before last.
He even admitted that they very heavily curate stuff and they play what they want to play, and even if it gets repeated a lot, if they have a format that works, that makes money, that attracts listeners, they're going to stick with it. And I can't blame them for that, but it's not really something I want to listen to either, right?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, that's the case. Mark, we got some questions rolling in. Let's go ask them and answer them.
Okay, so there's a question here from Mr. Stryker, and it says, how much per week did Mitch make at WAMS?
How much a week? I could tell you how much I made a year. You could figure it out. Probably like $15,000. That was a lot of money back in the 70s. Doing something.
What is that with inflation? We got to calculate that.
Probably like $150,000, something like that, if you were to calculate it. But you look at Mark. Mark, you do the number. You're the numbers guy. You tell us what it is.
It would be $14,000.
What's $15,000 in 1975 money?
It would be, Mitch, for you, it'd be $14,000 today.
Excellent. But the other weird thing, Mr. Stryker, is that I would have paid them to be on the air. I didn't care. Money was not the object. I was living at home. I didn't have that many expenses. And I enjoyed the position I had, and I had fun with it. And eventually money starts to take over as the deciding factor. At FIL, I made substantially more than that. In today's dollars, it would be a big chunk of change. But then, when I made the switch to a major market, all kinds of things changed very quickly. And it's weird. I'll just tell this side story real quickly, is when I was at WAMS, I was, a beginning DJ. I had lots of good friends. Ray Quinn, for example, who we've had on the show, was my boss. I had a lot of other guys. It was like a band of brothers. We were all working to get into a big market where we could, get paid major money and be, superstars, et cetera, et cetera. It was an objective, but we were all in it together, and we had the most fun living that way because of the camaraderie that was there. When I made the move to a major market to Philadelphia, thank you. Somebody just said us $97,000 would have been 15 grand back in the day. So, okay, fine. 97,000. I'd like to have that right now, by the way. But anyhow, the point I'm making is that when I made the move to a major market, the Band of Brothers thing went away because you're with other professionals and you're expected to know what you wanted and how to do your job and to do your four and hit the door, as Joel Denver used to say. So I didn't associate much with the guys there. There was nowhere else to really want to be because I wanted to be where I was. And we did the dynamics were totally different. You know, I drove in, did the show, left, and I was expected to be a professional and execute the job consistent with good ratings. And there wasn't a lot of all that other, mishy-mash that would go on the side. So that was the difference between the two. Mark, more questions?
We don't have more questions right now, but we do have some comments. Mr. Stryker has something to. Yes, he has something to say about Canadian wine.
Oh, jeez.
So brace yourself. Canadian wine made from squeezed used hockey pucks.
That's just mean. That's mean.
That's downright terrible.
Yeah, that's mean.
Typical American humor. Always.
And he brings up your
the
alias of Bobby Dashboard Dark. So what is Dashboard? How does Dashboard play? Tell us about Dashboard and how
I haven't gotten over the swipe at my Canadian brother here who's on it. He has to take some of that crap from.
I can take it. It's fine.
From the tariff wielding Americans.
He does have a comment that's probably very true.
Is it legit?
He says that Pro Tools is what's making all the songs sound the same.
Certainly helping.
That's horseshit.
Horseshit?
Oh,
that's
really?
Horseshit.
I think it's helping to make them sound the same.
That is entirely up to the operator and the talent of the engineer and the mixer that's working on things. The tool only does what you tell it to do. So the tools have made production more streamlined, more efficient, easier. It's democratized. Tools like Pro Tools and that type of product have really democratized things, and also technology has allowed everybody in their bedroom to basically put out a fairly decent sounding, EP.
By the way, we just dropped off. YouTube just dropped off.
Oh, yeah. It says connection lost. It'll attempt to reconnect. It must be my bandwidth or something's happened to my internet here. What's happened?
Or they just
the
stream just. They didn't like you picking on our Canadian brothers and sisters.
I wonder what happened.
No, maybe the air check took a while to hit.
That wouldn't cut us off. They would mute us.
I tested it earlier in a test stream. It was fine. Yeah, the stream died. Well, so much for that. What happened here? Hold on a second.
They're gonna think we got flagged by somebody.
Well, it definitely had nothing to do with the swearing, because that you wouldn't get taken down.
No.
Although it's funny,
swear all the time.
I said horse shit, the stream died.
Yeah, why?
That sucks. Well, let's just keep going. I'm recording, and what I'll probably do is just delete.
Just cut all this chatter out,
and I'll just upload the recorded version. So we'll just keep going.
Okay.
Anyways, where are we?
Okay.
So to answer Steven Stryker's question, I think it is. That's not accurate. I think it's just the tool. We use the tools how we use the tools, right? So it's not Pro Tools' fault that people are producing pop music that all kind of sounds the same, right? So it's a nuanced problem. There isn't an easy explanation. Some of it may come down to record companies that are looking for specific sounds, but I think the whole industry, the landscape has changed, right? So.
Yeah, I'll give a counterpoint to that. Yeah. I think that it does have a lot to do with the way music sounds now, because look at the styling and the way you used to go into a studio and record. A lot of it had to be done consistently at the same time or with the rest of the band in there, and a lot of nuances when you're performing with the other members. With Pro Tools, you're able to concentrate on tiny little snippets like the guitar part or the bass or the loops for the drums or whatever, and then reassemble those individually without any kind of interaction between them. I think it sort of opened the doors for that type of mediocrity in recording. It really comes down to control. And the style meant that if you had a tiny little drum fill in the middle of a song somewhere, back in the old days, you might be able to punch in and fix it on a 24 track, but on a Pro Tools session, no problem. You could do 10 or 15 versions of it and fix it that easily. So I kind of disagree with you to a certain degree that I think Pro Tools sort of made it easier to be stacking tracks and doing things that never happened in a recording studio when you were pushing tape. And it might be just out of convenience or otherwise, but when you were in a studio, which back in the day when they had these giant studios all over the place, you were spending some serious money, and you had a lot of people there to make that come together. So there was that little pressure of time constraints, money being spent, the record company saying you're going over budget, lots of people involved in making the decisions as opposed to one person in a room somewhere doing things. I'm not saying Pro Tools is bad. I'm just saying it's different. It's a style of recording, and the styles have changed, and therefore it's affected the outcome of the music. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I think that's fair, but also keep in mind, even back in the analog days with tape, I mean, if you look at one of the most famous examples of this with Kiss Alive, which is a very famous live recording that Kiss did, they overdubbed. They got in a lot of shit for overdubbing stuff. So that record in many ways is inauthentic because they decided they wanted to polish and fix some minor things that they didn't like in that live performance, which to me is really terrible because that's not what happened at the show. So, I mean, that was done way before Pro Tools. So I think...
Yeah, but that's not a Pro Tools complaint. You're just saying that they had the chance to polish it. I submit that with Pro Tools...
used for, yeah.
I think...
You're more likely to spend the money on... Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
I was just going to say that there's an argument here that, there could be certain settings in Pro Tools that make the songs sound somewhat similar today. But I think it's much more interesting to go back and look at the session bands like the Wrecking Crew that did so many of these recordings. How were they able to look at all these different songs and keep the personalities of those bands when they were essentially rewriting a lot of the songs as they came in the door?
Well, if you watch any of the specials on it, you'll see that the band, the Wrecking Crew, which probably is responsible for maybe 60, 70% of the popular music in the 60s, played so well together that they didn't have to worry about certain things that they could say to Tedeschi, they could say, a little more of a mandolin sound out of that guitar. And he could do it instantly and make it different. So whether they were doing a Carpenter song or a Tommy James and the Shondells, there was some consistency there. They were a tight band. And what I find interesting about those bands like the Wrecking Crew and the Funk Brothers that did a lot of the Motown stuff is how jazz and blues influenced all of that music in such unique ways and made interesting compilations and ways to do it with the consistency of sound. Having that band that played so well together. Look at, Chicago or Blood, Sweat, and Tears or bands that had, lots of instruments in them. They played really well together. And because they did that, there was an outgrowth. Like studio musicians turned into Steely Dan, or studio musicians turned into Toto. And some of the Toto band came into doing Steely Dan. There was all of that style of being able to play together. And I guarantee you that most of that recording that was done in a recording studio with tape running, they played together. They were probably looking at each other. And if they had a mistake or a problem, sure, they'd go in and polish the diamond a little bit more and do a punch in and fix it that way. With Pro Tools, it's a no-brainer. You can do it instantly. Back then, you had to go, I don't know if we can do it. If we do a punch in, it's destructive and we'll lose that part forever. With Pro Tools, it's non-destructive. All the editing it happens in the digital domain, so you don't lose anything. So it's just a different style of recording, and I just think that it didn't necessarily make for a better recording. Nowadays, they would never suffer a Wrecking Crew or a Funk Brothers. They might have a backup band or something like that plays under most of them, but I think that was just a thing of the times. And certainly the times are a-changing. What are you going to do?
Absolutely. And I think that also, getting back to the main topic of the show, as we talked about things with how things have evolved with performance on broadcast, is that you're right. And I think we have to accept that things change over time for better or worse. I mean, certainly there are things that I like and don't like. I don't want to be a curmudgeon either, because I think that it's very easy to pick apart and find things to not like in anything. But I think, as a society, I'm trying to be better about finding things to actually be positive about. So what is it about, if I'm in my car driving down the road and I'm listening to a podcast, or I'm listening to a YouTuber, or I'm listening to a radio station, try to find the positives. Like, what is this about the content do I like? What is it that they're doing that I like? Because in the past, I just find that I was just way too negative about everything, right? So I could sit here, wax poetic about how radio sucks and how all the DJs on modern radio stations are all boring and they have vocal fry and they sound like shit. I could talk about that for hours, but I think we should probably also talk about the positive things, is that they bring different perspectives, and I think that's a good thing too.
But I think
were you the one that said? Weren't you saying that wouldn't it be interesting to bring radio back like it was in the 70s and see how that would fly with today's audience?
No, I said that I think radio's gone to from one extreme to the other.
And would do that very well.
Compete better with all the different opportunities that are out there to consume media, that perhaps they should start to look at bringing back some of that nostalgia that made radio so popular in the 70s and the 80s.
Bringing back personality?
You're
Interesting.
right. Bringing back a lot of the personality and seeing how...
Would you invest money?
Yeah.
Would you invest your money to do that?
Well, that's the question. I think nostalgia can work, but I don't know, does that have a lot of runway, longevity-wise? I mean, the broadcast industry is already hurting pretty bad in a lot of markets. There's a lot of consolidation, a lot of firing, a lot of changing strategies. So... maybe that would help boost ratings for a little while, but how much runway does radio have if they were to do that? Does that give them 5 years of increased listenership, 10 years? I mean, I don't know.
It's funny.
Let me do a micro. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
It's funny you should say that, because according to an article in Radio Inc. this week by Cameron Coates, AM/FM radio held 68% of the share of ad-supported audio among Americans, 18%, which is down slightly 1 percentage point from last year. In-car listening remained strong, declining just 1% from 86% to 85%. Meanwhile, Pandora and Spotify were perceived as having a combined share of 43%, when in reality it was less than 10%. Radio still commands 85% of the supported audio time on the road, and podcasting trails at 7%, and ad-supported Spotify accounts for just 2%. AM/FM streaming also is strong among those 25 to 54. It has overtaken both Spotify and Pandora. Spoken word audio, driven by personality-led content like talk shows and podcasts, continues to grow post-pandemic, and the format now holds a 37% share compared to 29% pre-COVID. So it sounds like
really interesting.
My head wants to explode. Mark, let me do a thumbnail pitch to you and see if it sounds interesting to you. This is purely hypothetical. Let's say that you had a spare FM frequency and you needed to do something on it. And we wanted to do something with a little bit of personality. Let's say we bring back a little bit of the old radio and do the style like you heard on the air check that I played earlier, and play classic hits, like, big charting, instantly recognizable songs that were very popular in the 70s and 80s. And the personality that you paid a premium to get also recognized that, his bread and butter was also the potential advertisers out there, and that personality went out with the sales guys and tried to cultivate a relationship with all the potential sponsors, do you think that would be a viable business model? It's okay to say no.
I think it would be a viable business model. I think that the successful stations all have a sales team that's very strong and relies on the perceived public persona of the station, those people that are the announcers or the disc jockeys, whatever you want to call them, those personalities in helping them make those sales. I think it's really important for everybody to get out and be exposed themselves to the public so the public can put a face to a name and a personality and everything else and feel like they're friends. I think that really promotes
That's cool.
the station financially.
But I also agree with Alex. I'm not sure what the shelf life of that would be, because it's been tried before with oldies. There was a format called the Arrow, which CBS, when they were an entity on the radio, I forget who owns them now. Odyssey, I think so. They played 70s music. They played like 200-300 songs, including the Carpenters. That were big in the 70s. It was called Arrow, and it was immediately popular because people found that very refreshing and interesting. But after a couple of years, not so much.
But
the Magic formats did the same thing with a limited
don't
format.
You think that a lot of that is that you're taking a company that has hundreds of radio stations across the country, and they're distributing this through all those hundreds. So it's really hard for the salespeople to work with a local community. And if you took that same trial or the same test and you did it locally for a local station where those people, the listening audience became, one-on-one opportunity time with the disc jockeys, the announcers, whatever, and the sales team worked to promote those businesses, I think it would have a different outcome. I think it'd have a totally different outcome.
Okay. There's a TV show on HBO Max that I'm watching called Duster, and it's shot with a little bit of a 70s mentality. J.J. Abrams is behind it, and they are playing 70s hits that I haven't heard since I played them on the radio. Like I heard "Slippin' in the Darkness" by War, which I haven't heard since then. I was like, oh, God, I remember that song. It was great. And the edits are perfect. And I rarely hear good edits on TV shows. Perfect edits, starting to stopping at the right points. Same thing with other songs. They have got it so dialed in that it's all Mark. It's all Mark on Mark TV. They have songs dialed in to the point where they just fit perfectly. They were playing like Tommy James and the Shondells, and I was instantly calling them out. Like, I know what that song is. I know what that song is. What effect do you think that has on your listeners? Because again, that's music for people in their 60s and 70s. Why would they be doing that on a contemporary show that's trying to skew 25 to 45, let's say? What's going on with that?
I don't know.
Comments?
Do you really think that the average listener is? I mean, what is the average listening age, or what was this on? This was on Netflix or something?
No, it's HBO Max.
Okay,
so it's a big streaming service.
I don't know the demo that watches that. Is it 45?
Maybe they don't know either.
Yeah,
but I would say it's skewing for a remake of the 70s, because Duster is talking about a Plymouth Duster, the car,
right,
and a lot of the references are going back to that era. It's very interesting that any news show would go that far back into the past to try to rekindle some kind of relationship. I'm just saying that I didn't instantly recognize all the music. I instantly recognized most of it. And it created a mood. It was like,
right.
I recognize that song, but I'm not sure where, but it set an immediate mood. So I'm just drawing back to your idea, or our idea, that if we did a classic hits format, that people may not know what they're hearing, but they may like it for completely different reasons.
Well,
maybe there's a little nostalgia.
Classic hits changes from generation to generation. So
that's why it's a good name.
When I was growing up, it was 50s, and now now classic hits music is 80s, 90s. So.
I got hired on a station sight unseen in Philadelphia called WPEN, and that's where I got. By the way, that's where I got the nickname Dashboard. because we were playing 50s and 60s music, all that doo-wop-y stuff. You know, some of it was okay, but most of it was horrible vocalizations, horrible singing. And I finally told my boss, Julian Breen, I said, Julian, I can't stand this. I really can't. He said, well, you got to sign this contract. And he said, you've only been here 3 months. How could you possibly leave? I had afternoon drive. He said, you're going to quit your first job in the big markets because you don't like the music that's playing? I said, you bet. I hate it. It's horrible. So when you say you like the 50s and 60s, I hated it with a passion. The only problem is I didn't know what they were going to play before I got the job. They kept it a giant secret.
I wasn't saying I liked it. I was just saying that when I was growing up, the oldies.
Got it. When you were growing up, got it.
60s,
I understood.
Compared to now, it's 80s and 90s. We do have
I grew up in the 70s. Yeah, go.
We have a question. Laura's asking, sorry, I got it. Laura's asking, Paul Harvey was a talk radio, but, sorry, it fell off my screen. Paul Harvey was talk radio, but would you agree that he had a distinct style?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Paul Harvey's real charm was that he could tell a story and go into a commercial and you wouldn't know where the story left off and the commercial started up, which I think was a talent that's lost. I just don't think that they do that anymore. But he was just an interesting guy. He would go and go to the API or the UPI machine, which is this big teletype that sat in the corner that spit paper out, yellowish paper, and it would have stories all over the country that AP and UPI would pick up. And he'd circle them, and he'd do a story. He'd just spontaneously pick up these stories. In the middle of the country, in the Midwest, where things are hot and things are dusty, there is a story of the Easter egg that never was. And he'd have some kind of great lead in like that, and then go into this long story, and then he'd end up selling. And that's the way they make molasses in the country, and I always have mother's molasses, because that was Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey, good day.
King of the live read.
He had a style, and he had a syndicated program that ran all over the country. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that was a very memorable style. Now, who does that today? Joe Rogan?
Nobody.
Mr. Beast? You don't think so? Do you find him compelling when he talks about aliens?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the two names that you mentioned there, I think Joe Rogan and Mr. Beast are two compelling creators out there with very, very different styles. Look, you know, and people like Joe Rogan, I know he's fairly divisive. You either fall into kind of two camps. Either you really enjoy his show, or you absolutely think he's disgusting and you don't like it at all. So I fall into I tend to enjoy. I don't listen to it that often, but he has some really interesting guests, and he certainly has a wide variety of guests. But Mr. Beast is a very, very different style, and I think you have to respect the different styles of anybody. Anybody who's good at their craft, who's able to amass a large audience and build a community. I have a lot of respect for those people. I may not necessarily like the content, but look, if they're good at their craft, you got to respect that.
Okay. So here's what we've learned today. We've learned that there are different styles of radio that reflected current events and what was going on around. It might have been influenced by the music available to be played at that time. It might have been affected, or certainly was affected by the number of selections or decisions you make today versus the decisions you made then. When then meant you maybe had 2 or 3 radio stations in your market, and there was no internet, and you heard the music you became interested in on the radio first. Now today it's all social media, and exposure is completely different. So I think all of those have affected the style the way it used to be and the style it is today. Would you guys not all agree?
I agree. I think that's a fair statement.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. And I think I also learned, I just want to say too, that I learned a little bit too from talking to, when I was in broadcast school, really quick. That was when they started talking about how you should bring authenticity, just be yourself. Don't try to imitate other people. One of the questions that I actually asked them is, I asked them, where does that voice come from? And I think it's kind of a complex question. We somewhat answered it too, but sometimes people are just born with a certain gift. And I think that you're born with a certain voice, and that's your voice, right? So like Mitch, like you just naturally have this big booming voice that carries really well, and you know how to use your voice properly, and that's, you know, you obviously got better over time. But when we listen to that air check,
it didn't come naturally.
In the 70s, you know, we listened to that air check even from the early days. You clearly had talent. You clearly had a voice.
Oh, thank you.
Right. So, you know, some people are just blessed in that.
Look at people like Paul Pee Wee Herman. I'm trying to remember his real name. Paul
Rubens.
Paul Rubens. Yeah. Did he instantly have the Pee Wee character? No. If you watch the special, he developed that over time. It didn't spring out of him. And then the crazy thing about the story is he developed this character, and then that was the only personality that people wanted to interact with. They could care less about Paul Rubens. They're more interested in Pee Wee Herman. So he kind of lost himself in that role. So to answer your question, a little bit of timing, a little bit of hard work to get there, a lot of experimentation, and then finding out you either made it or you didn't. Same thing with being on the radio. If you had a style and a personality, it was justified by the ratings you got and people that would listen to your show. So that was the way it was, and that's the way it sort of is today, except there's no room for really stretching out and letting your personality show, which is a bummer. Want to let everybody know that next week we have our returning champion, Gary Berkowitz, will be here. He's going to talk to us a little bit about voice direction, which is kind of an extension of today's show. He's going to give us some tips about what does work today and what styles are being done by a guy that represents a lot of radio stations. So that should be fun. Alex, tell folks how they get in touch with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mitch. You can get in touch with us a couple of ways, actually. You can join our Discord community, which is the best way to become part of the show. If you scan the QR code that you're seeing over my left shoulder, that will let you into our Discord community. And we've got lots of different channels broken up into different topics. So we don't have to always talk about this show, but if you have any suggestions with topics or guests that you want to see on future episodes, let us know. And of course, you can also reach out to us on social media. We're at The Last Angry DJ, available on all platforms. And of course, by email, you can send us an email to hello@thelastangrydj.com. There's a contact form on the website as well. This podcast is available, or this show is available, not just on YouTube as a video, but if you'd like to listen to it on your morning commute, you can find it in any podcast app. You can find it in Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and Stitcher. You can ask your Amazon Alexa device or any smart device to listen to the podcast. Just ask for The Last Angry DJ, and that should work for you as well. We'd like to thank the people at Boink Software, Oliver Breidenbach, who make Mimo Live, which is what this podcast is running on. We couldn't do the show at this level of production without Mimo Live, so thank you to those guys. And of course to you, the audience, for joining us on the live chat today and for listening to the show. We really, really appreciate your support. And speaking of support, you can actually support us another way. If you go to patreon.com/donate, that's patreon.com/donate, become a coffee supporter at $2 a month. We would sincerely appreciate it. Back to you, man.
And we want to also thank our friends at Arby's that had the meats, and they also have a great app if you want to give them a shot. They will tell you how you can get stuff all the time. Alex, did you finish here? I jumped in on you with Arby's. I'm hungry.
I think that's it.
All right. And Mark, what were your observations for today's show? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up, and I really want to know what your favorite meal at Arby's is.
Oh, it's got to be beef and cheddar with curly fries and maybe a Jamocha shake.
There you go.
What is a Jamocha shake? Can you tell the audience what that is?
Mark, what's a Jamocha?
I have no idea.
It's chocolate with Jamocha in there. So I don't know if that's disgusting or exciting, but I don't want to lose a sponsor.
Jamocha?
So
what is that?
I don't care to figure out what that is.
Okay, all right.
Do a search on the internet. It's probably going to be something that comes up on a bad site. What's
not
Jamocha?
Coffee?
I don't think so. I think it's some kind of exotic flavor. They do all that stuff. All right. Thanks so much. It was a great show. Thank you for talking to us. Don't forget that Gary Berkowitz will be our returning champion next week, where we talk about voices and styles of radio. Very, very good follow-up to today's show. Thank you. Until then, we'll see you all. Take care.
Swagger down the street with your red lips and funky beat. You better hold your head up to the sky. I'm gonna roll with you till the day I die.